Hi guys, before we get into the episode, me and Ed wanted to tell you about ICC 2025.
Yeah, that's right, Phil. And if you're in automation, industrial tech, or just a fan of Ignition, you need to know about ICC, the Ignition Community Conference. That's coming up this September 16th to the 18th in Sacramento.
Ed and I have been in the past, and honestly, it's one of the best industrial events we've attended. Big energy, sharp people, integrators, and end users. Sessions that go way beyond just the surface level technology.
Absolutely, Phil. It's one of those events that you and I both had incredible experiences, really taken our eyes off of what's possible and what can be done. And this year at ICC, there's going to be over 1,000 automation pros from around the world, and they'll be attending and sharing their stories. There'll be over 50 expert speakers and 40 exhibitor booths showcasing what's next in industrial innovation.
It's really shaping up to be the event of the year. New ProveIT showcases where we're showcasing Industry 4 problems solved live.
That's an incredible experience. Just seeing that part of it would be amazing among everything else going on. But also on top of that, Phil, there's brand new collab rooms where you can actually meet the speakers and get hands-on with Ignition tools. It's a kind of thing that really levels up your experience.
Yeah, and if you can't make it to California, there's no worries. You can grab your live stream pass and tune in from anywhere. It's an opportunity to really enjoy the event remotely and be part of the community.
Hold on, Phil. Just before we get into this episode, I just want to bring up a potential opportunity here for those who want to go to ICC. We have special permission from Inductive Automation to provide a code to help them get a good discount for that event. For more information, please DM myself or Phil, and we'll help you get a special price for ICC. Please know, though, this is a very limited offer, so please be quick because that will close. Thank you. And big thanks to Inductive Automation for supporting this podcast, the Unplugged and IIoT podcast.
Let's get into the episode.
Hello and welcome to Unplugged, an IoT podcast, where we delve into the fascinating world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Seboa.
Well, good day, Phil. Hi, everyone. My name's Ed Fuentes. Well, Phil, this is our first time that we're actually together in the same room, which is quite an amazing feat, especially if we live in different states. But how great it is, not just us in the same room, but we also have a very special guest with us today. He's also in the same room with us, but I'll let Phil talk more about him. But he's Colby Clegg, and he's the CEO of Inductive Automation. So, Colby, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, fantastic.
So if you haven't heard of Colby and you've heard of Ignition, well, they definitely go hand in hand. So today we're going to really dive into what's new around Ignition 8.3 and the upcoming ICC conference. We're really going to talk about those types of things that we're going to talk about. So Colby, I guess straight to the biggest ticket in town. I guess 8.3 is on the horizon. Maybe you can go into some of the points of what's coming in 8.3.
Sure. So I thought you were going to ask me when is it going to be out, but I'm sure that'll come soon. The answer is 4 months ago, I guess, but no. Okay. So what we've been saying about 8.3, we've been calling it kind of the completion of our trilogy, so to speak. The numbering is a little funny, but 8.0, 8.1, and then 8.3, which we can explain. But these three releases kind of finally deliver a vision that we had probably back in 2018 or 19, right? A new kind of generation of Ignition. 8.0 really kind of changed the fundamentals of Ignition, and then we've been building on it since then. So 8.3 is the completion of a vision. And what that means specifically is, first of all, the way that all of the resources in Ignition, all of the configuration is stored in the file system, being open, being easily managed by source control and whatnot. On top of that, a layer of a new RESTful API that can open up the system to any kind of more programmatic accessibility options. And then on top of that, just the power of managing data, building applications, and so on. So that gets into a space where it just continues to evolve what we've had. But that whole stack is, what we wanted to achieve years ago, and now it's finally kind of all coming together.
We'll probably go a bit deep into those different ones you mentioned around source control. But before I get there, Colby, I want to ask you, you obviously were there at the genesis of what Ignition is today through with your team, starting quite small and growing to a significant team as it is today. So when you released 8.1, which you mentioned being, or 8.0, 8.1, which were like milestone, and this 8.3 being even better, what are some of the challenges you faced in, let's say, in the initial release to 8 and what 8.3 is today? What are the major challenges in releasing such major software?
Yeah, absolutely. So we released Ignition in 2010. That was the first version of Ignition, actually Ignition 7.0, funny enough. And that came after our original software product. So we had Factory SQL, Factory PMI going back to 2003, and hence the naming. We put version 3 and version 4 together into our combined product, Ignition 7. And so from 7 to 8, we were really rushing to try to build functionality, just, all sorts of different functions, alarming, reporting, all the base functions people expect, right? Around, to the 2016, 17, 18 timeframe, we then got to a place where the adoption was growing, and you start to then see after that time the way the system needs to evolve, right? And so 8.0 was a huge, huge release because in that we essentially did two core things. We rewrote the tag system, the core data model of Ignition, right? And that was directly in response to people building systems that were bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And then we released Perspective, which was an entirely new visualization system. So before that, we had Vision, which was a Java-rich client-based client system that still exists, of course, but it was time to build an HTML, web-based solution. So to design a complete, WYSIWYG application builder in web technology, which changes so rapidly, which we knew we had to build in a way that could evolve over time, and then to build a new data model that has to not break existing systems, but be backwards compatible, but then deliver all the performance we wanted. That was a big challenge. So that's the starting point, right? So then from there, over from 8.0 to 8.1, it's a matter of going into a place of with our versioning, the odd numbers were long-term support versions. So we have this pattern historically of releasing new features and then coming back and releasing a long-term support version that refines elements of it and adds a little bit more. And that's what 8.1 was. At that point, we felt like we had a really great product that we could kind of focus on refining, really focusing on stability, performance, and so on. With Perspective being new, there were a lot of performance aspects and just a lot of getting it in people's hands and seeing how they use it. That leads to a lot of refinement. So that's what we wanted to focus on. So we chose to kind of slow down and focus on that. Now it's been 4 or 5 years, and if you look, we release a new update every month, like on the release train. And so we've had 4 years of updates, and sometimes it's bug fixes, sometimes it's entirely new features, right? So it's not that we haven't touched it, but it's been in a kind of a continuous refinement process. So now finally with 8.3, we're coming out with, the final mile, so to speak, some major underlying changes, kind of fitting to that major version.
And that's one of those features that Phil did bring up earlier on, was around source control and version management. I think 8.3 really goes to the next level when it comes to source control, change management using flat files, root JSON. Can you tell us what are some of the benefits you think integrators and end users are going to get from this sort of change in that why we manage, or why Ignition will help them with change management and version control?
Sure. The underlying aspect of so much what I'm mentioning and we're talking about is about accessibility and really just flexibility and tooling, which you start with an idea, you start with some simple use cases. Source control, it's been around forever. Everyone understands being able to control your changes, see your version logs. That's pretty straightforward in terms of how it's beneficial. If people are developing an Ignition, it's really beneficial to be able to track those changes. But then going forward, you have so many customers now managing systems that are growing or are composed of many systems. They want to standardize resources across the different plants, the different layers. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity to use, source control tools for that as well, not just the version tracking, but for kind of deployment management as well and resource management. There's another feature in 8.3 called deployment modes, which is a new feature to help you have systems that have different roles, right? And the way that works is that you have your configuration and then you have elements that override different aspects for that system. So for example, you have a dev system, a testing system, and then a production system, right? But I can see those two interacting really well in terms of having the source control, the different resource management, and then your different deployment systems to really give users tremendous power in how they manage all these different systems that they're responsible for. Our customers today are building systems with dozens or hundreds of ignition gateways, right? And that becomes a real management challenge. So that's how this stuff I think can help a lot.
I mean, that kind of demonstrates you as a software company really listening to the market and the industrial changes that are happening, more DevOps type operations. So it's really good to see that sort of market research, going out into the market, listening to your customers, seeing what the needs are, and bringing that into 8.3 is really kind of profound, in the way that you're going about that. It's pretty awesome.
Well, if you want to know the secret, it's pretty easy. It's about making IT, solutions available to the plant floor, right? That's how we started. Our first product was connecting PLCs to databases, SQL databases, right? Which didn't seem revolutionary, but it was in effect because the plant floor was so separate, right? So just making that easy, where a normal systems integrator could understand and work on it, opened so many more doors with IT, right? That process is just as important today. And so all these tools, these are things that IT are using every day. So when you make it easier on both sides, it just makes the conversation so much better.
Yeah, so I guess one of the features of 8.3 is event streaming. How do you see that impacting the day-to-day of these ignition deployments?
Well, so event streams, for a long time now, people have considered Ignition as like the data hub, right, for their plan. I would think of Ignition mostly as an application builder, a system for, you know, performing some operation on the plant, but so many people, they're using it to move data around and transform it and go from level to level, right? Okay, so event streams is a centralized way to manage that. It's a fundamentally speaking, you've got data sources, data handlers, and then the sinks. And so you bring data in, you do something, send it out. And so that just helps to standardize what people have been building in different ways. It gives you a central place where you can monitor performance and throughput and whatnot. And people build so many different things in Ignition, and why people love Ignition so much is you pretty much can always build whatever you want. That can also come with a little bit of a support headache, a little bit of a maintenance headache, right? So Eventstream is a great example of taking something that people are doing, but standardizing it so that it's more supportable, more maintainable, and so on.
You talk about Ignition being an application development environment. What is one of those applications that you've seen maybe through the Exchange resource or through the forums or all the different, I guess, avenues for you guys to celebrate what is Ignition? What's been your standout? Or have you remembered any?
Uh, you know, it's such a challenge for us to concisely explain what Ignition is, right? So the easy thing we always fall back to is SCADA, right?
Right.
Okay, well, that means different things to different people still, historically and based on industry. It also is based on the old, or I shouldn't, the standard automation pyramid that people are familiar with, these layers, right? So SCADA is kind of a level 2 kind of application where you're on the plant floor, you're running, or you got like your HMIs, okay, but then above that, you have kind of your plant visibility. There's obviously so many customers use it for that. I was just touring a paint factory the other day, and the way to see the way they've integrated all their lines, all their, resource management and whatnot. And there's, 100 screens throughout the factory where people are doing both HMI functions and, more overview functions. That happens all the time. But what people then, when they evolve a little bit more in their knowledge and understanding of Ignition, what they really start to say is, well, it's so much more than SCADA. Why do you call it SCADA when it's so much more? I'm like, well, you have to relate to something people know. But to me now these days, it really is, you know, it's a platform for, industrial enterprise integration. What companies are trying to do is integrate everything, right? And Ignition is a platform for that. So to me, it's kind of, it breaks that paradigm of the levels, and it's a new paradigm. It's a platform for that enterprise integration, right? And so that spans, and so the companies who have gone all in on that are then in a whole other category, and it's really incredible to see. I'm sure I could think of a variety of examples, but then, you know,
Oh, look, Phil and I, we've probably seen so many examples of people use Ignition beyond what you said, SCADA. And actually, we probably say that's, we say modern SCADA, but the reality is it is an industrial data platform. Talking about that, I was fortunate enough to be at ICC last year. We'll talk about ICC this year soon. But one of the features you brought up, and it got an applause, was perspective offline.
okay,
Yeah, I know that's been a long-term requirement because perspective, in my mind anyway, I love what it can do. I love how it frees the visualization of data beyond SCADA. But the offline one, tell us about other than the community asking for it, what are some of the benefits you see that offline perspective can provide customers and users, and what does it do for them?
yeah. So offline data collection is something that, on one hand, as the world progresses, connectivity continues to evolve, but nonetheless, there are still so many use cases that can be incredibly impactful, because in this specific case, if you don't have access, it means you're very remote. And if you're very remote, it means it's expensive or difficult to get somebody there, right? And these people are going out, they're visiting well sites, or energy stations, whatever, and they need an effective way to collect data, to get the most data, that so they don't have to go back, or to make the most of that time, right? And so perspective offline is a way to build systems that can then operate offline. You go out there, you can collect data. When you get back into a range of connectivity, it automatically synchronizes back to the gateway, and it's really kind of that simple. But the use cases that need it are very impactful, right?
Myself and Ed have been fortunate to be at ICC and feel the impact of the community at large as well. I guess this year really is a bit of a big change in the landscape as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us why move venues, why scale up, maybe level up,
Level up.
and then edit it. Yeah, maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we had our first conference. I should know this, about 14 years ago. I think this is our 14th one. Could be a little wrong by year, but and when we started the conference, well, it's really going out on a limb. We didn't know if anyone would show up. We didn't know what to call it. We called the Ignition Community Conference because we didn't want to talk the user conference, but we thought maybe it'd be a little bit more. We didn't have any grand ass of plans that seemed right to us. And then, sure enough, as it, when it happened, everyone showed up, and there was just immediately an energy that was just incredible. Everyone's talking together. And so it was kind of a self-fulfilling process that community developed around the conference. And, so over the years, we had at a wonderful venue, which is we're just down the street from our headquarters in Folsom, California. That facility can hold about 850 people. It's pretty much limited to that. So you've been there a lot of time. You try to have people in every corner. We try to put tents outside. We try to make the most of it. And so really, from the 14 years, people would ask us, when are we going to go to a bigger facility? And we really were hesitant because the feeling there was so special. I think by having to be kind of contained, you had a feeling of people very close proximity. They had to talk. I mean, so there's all that. This year we're moving to the Sacramento Convention Center. So Sacramento is just down the road from Folsom, and it is a much bigger venue. It has the opportunity to basically be where we want to be. And so we're targeting to probably double the conference. We're targeting around 1,500 attendees, right? We're really working hard to try to capture a lot of the same elements and made ICC so special, and then kind of make it a little bit larger as, frankly, the community around the world has grown so dramatically over those 14 years, right?
Yeah.
Over those 14 years, our company is probably 10x in size, I suppose, certainly 10x in various measurements, but that's really the challenge this year. Is like trying to level it up, but keep it what it is.
Yeah. Is there any, I know there's a few exciting announcements being made recently, bringing in the ProveIT conference under that umbrella as well, which is really exciting. I guess what's your feel about bringing, the ProveIT
Yeah.
session in?
Well, ProveIT, yeah, I was very excited to share that their first conference that they held, 4.0 Solutions, Walker Reynolds, that whole team had become such an important element in this community. The unified name-based concepts that they teach have really progressed, the industry, the industrial Internet of Things concept, in training. So the ProveIT was very exciting, and we love the cons. I mean, frankly, for us with Ignition, with our whole history, our whole thing has been basically prove it. I mean, you would agree, like, putting the software on the website, I just downloaded the unlimited trial, you just reset it. Those have been fundamentals since, the very beginning, right? So, sometimes if they'll put, well, hey, you do this, you do that. Some, hey, download and find out, so that really, there was a lot of elevator that kind of ran through to us, like into our history with MTTT and all that. It's really a great fit. And so it's user space with a larger, space for vendors, right? You already kind of had vendors at the show that are in our ecosystem that kind of resonate with our technology. Um, we just were looking at how to evolve that. And so, talking with the 4.0 solution team, it seemed like a great fit to take the platform that people are pretty much using, the de facto standard for building these types of solutions, and pairing them up with the vendors to want to show out how they can, bolster that ecosystem, that community. It's just really a great fit.
In talking through that, no doubt that Ignition is that almost de facto standard a lot of people are using. And in this world of evolving software solutions, I mean, Phil and I, we sort of watch and hear and see so many technologies coming on board. But obviously, Ignition, it's like it's leading the charge sometimes, I find, in that the way you evolve, the way you ensure that you will stay ahead of trend of industry, almost not following it, but helping industry get to where it needs to get to. You're open, you're flexible, you definitely provide that, all those nuances. How do you ensure that you maintain that? Because, you've said you've 10x, you're 3 times as big as you were when 8.7, I think when 8.0 was released.
True.
So how do you do that? How do you keep that going?
Get lucky each day, I suppose. No, if fundamentals, right? Fundamental technological choices. You know, we've been fortunate, and probably we've ridden a lot of technological waves the right way, I would say. You can look, for example, there was recently a discussion online about Ignition in Java, which you don't hear much about anymore for good reason. It's not necessarily really think about. But when we wrote Ignition, I mentioned we had our first original 2 products, and those were in different languages. So Ignition was the unification into one language, and we chose Java because we wanted to be really what we thought was the first, complete platform independent SCADA system. There were certainly at the time various like niche products that could do different things, but there really wasn't any forerunner, front and center cross-platform solution, right? So a great example, just a little side note about that, we were the first to implement the OPC array spec independently, because we had to write it in Java, and that wasn't done yet, right? So that's just an example. So we were really dedicated to that. So at the beginning, you have some people who kind of want to nitpick that for different reasons, but the vision was to be platform independent. Okay, well, what happened? Then as technology progresses, look where we are today, where like platform independence is pretty vital to like the way people use and deploy software now, right? And so that's just a great example of a fundamental value. The openness, that's important. Just really focusing first on, we have this little motto we say, first make it possible, then make it easy. This is not even like, it's just something Carl and I, they got latched onto, years ago. And it really shows like, you build tools and then you come back and you refine them, but it's all about flexibility from the beginning, right? So, that's probably the main secret to success.
It just seems that you future-proof it as well through that software. Because one thing I sort of talk to customers when I ask them to look at Ignition is that it's pretty safe that it's gonna grow with you. you've built that sort of technology into it. So it's
Well, it's having a foundation and then not being afraid, not shying away from doing the hard things that come up from time to time to evolve it ahead of the need, really. I mentioned already from 7 to 8, rewriting our data model, rewriting our visualization system. Those are huge things, but it's like we could have not done that, and then we could have just capped and declined, right? And so it's a lot of that, the phrase of, disrupt yourself before you get disrupted type of thing. And so far we've done a great job of that. And so 8.3 definitely continues that because it's been a lot of work, right? It's been really hard, but it's going to set the foundation for really the next 10 years of the platform, frankly.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of development in in the industrial scene around AI as well being introduced. I mean, those foundations still apply within AI as well. How do you see AI being introduced into the Ignition ecosystem, maybe in a future iteration, or using the fundamentals that you've built?
People are already using it every day. I mean, it all comes from the openness and the way that Ignition as a platform can be extended in so many ways. You can build things into it, of course, with the applications you build, reaching out to the different, RESTful services or whatnot. We have our open, SDK where you can build, modules on top of it that do whatever. So people are doing so many things. Speaking about 8.3 for a moment, when you talk about the file system, the gateway API, if you want to, you know, if you want to use generative AI to generate systems, you need an open file format, which is now essentially what we have, right? And so I'm extremely excited about the opportunities around that. I think one of the biggest potential, use cases in the next few years for that is around this tremendous situation we have in the industry with so many entrenched legacy products that are now becoming frankly unsafe because they can't be updated. They can't be, it's just, they have to evolve. There has to be a generational shift, right? And so I get very excited about the opportunity to make that easier. I remember being here in Australia speaking on this subject last year, and so many customers say, yeah, we know we need to evolve them, but when are we going to have the time or the money? Well, look at the way that generative AI is taking time and money in so many different areas. So I'm very excited about that. On a higher level, right now, I mean, the data's there, this unified namespace, having data available, getting it out of the weeds, which is what we've been doing and progressing for the last, number of years, decade, like it just opens up so many opportunities. So, we try to build the system so that we're constantly amazed at what people build with it. We build tools, they build the solutions, and then we're amazed at what happens. So it's a very exciting space.
we Phil and I were fortunate enough to talk to a European integrator last week or 2 weeks ago, and one story he mentioned to us was that 3 or 4 years ago he had to really tell and teach people about Ignition, but now the market themselves are very familiar with Ignition through Europe. So we're just wondering how Ignition is growing globally. So what's the plans to keep that momentum going? Because obviously American company, uh, Genesis was there, and you're globally expanding. Are you surprised by that, or you strategically making that happen?
Well, I think, we always wish we could make it happen more quickly. But one of, our fundamental, it's just who we are, is to grow organically. We are an independent company. We are the same structure as we were 22 years ago. And our whole growth has been organic and bootstrapped. We've had no outside investment, no outside anything, right? And so when you talk about the Ignition community, and I know in the US, for example, it's extremely strong, right? People tell me all the time, oh, you are the standard. That's really wonderful to hear, but it's a little slower in other parts of the world, right? And so to see it catching on in Europe is wonderful. We have our presence here in Australia. It's really just about the right partners and growing organically. We do have some distributors in Europe. Here we had a distributor, and then it's turned over to being an official office. And so it's not exactly a very aggressive, action on our part, but it's really about trying to push the organic growth as well as possible. Just nurture that, right? Because that leads to a much stronger community and outcome, I believe.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you've been kind of paving the way for the land and expand type model for many years, mirror people, and providing that mechanism, 2-hour trials, unlimited 2-hour trials now. So that's been a real positive impact on the space as well. Me and Ed are continually trying to learn the next thing. It's a learning journey for us.
Well, okay, I can talk a lot about, so, my background, I was one of the original developers. So I was on the data side. Carl, my counterpart, was on the visual side. So I'm always fascinated by data technology. So I love, uh, what's going on. Obviously, AI, there's so much to learn. There's so many great things happening. But still, data technologies, data storage, data transport, we're living in truly, like, I mean, compared to what what we made do with, let's say, over the last 20 years in the evolution, like, we are in a wonderful golden age of incredible technologies out there, right? Some of them are in turn, there's, reach and then retract, but there's some really mature technologies now that are absolutely incredible. So I always try to keep my eye on that and pay attention there. From the other side, developing, I've been involved in the business the entire time, so it's been a natural evolution. Being CEO now, though, once you have the role, I thought I was prepared. It's been 3 years of an incredible learning to help, to run and lead a company, and then to confront a lot of these issues we're talking about here, how you plan for growth, how you reach to markets. It's something I've always been passionate about, but it's been a really intense period of learning. So I do everything I can to learn about, just continue to develop my skills as a leader for the company, motivator, getting out of just, I say I went from programming machines to programming people, but people are harder. So, so there's a lot I could talk about, but yeah, no, it's been a really wonderful period of time. And so this year, 2025, I think it's really like a lot of things coming together, both, my personal journey there, the technology itself, where we're at. So I've been telling our company internally, this is really a milestone year. It really is the start of a new era. That's not why we chose Level Up, but it always happens this way, that once we choose a top, a theme, it seems to then resonate everywhere you look. And so this really is a year for the company and the community to level up.
Fantastic. Well, Colby, it's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining our show today. It's really great to sit down with the CEO, obviously the person who was right at the genesis of Ignition, and to see it transform to what it is today, and watch the business and the company grow. And I suppose, on my part anyway, I'm very grateful for how Ignition has, well, changed both our careers in a way in what we're doing. So I want to appreciate your time today and your openness to spend time with us.
No, I'm truly happy to do it. And thank you both for everything you've done. You've been such an important part of the Ignition community in this part of the world, and in what you're doing now with the whole industry. So I really appreciate everything you do.
Fantastic. Thank you. And to all our listeners out there, don't forget to like and subscribe this podcast and share it with the rest of the community. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.